So imagine paying an extra $300,000 for a home, yet it still doesn't guarantee a place for your child in the school that you moved for. Yet every year, thousands of Singaporean families willingly pay the premium. So are they making one of the smartest decisions for their family? Or is this one of the most misunderstood property decisions? Today we are investigating the value of living within 1 km of a popular primary school. By the end of this video, you'll know when paying for the premium is worth it and when you're simply paying more for hope than certainty. Having helped more than 80 plus families in the past 3 years, I've heard the same 4 suspects come up again and again. So let's investigate all 4 and see which one actually holds up. So before we investigate, let's give you a very quick snapshot of how the Ministry of Education actually allocates students to the different schools. Annual primary school registration is done over 5 phases, phase 1 all the way to phase 2C. So in every phase, there are reserved spaces. So starting with phase 1, if they have already siblings who are currently staying in the school, they don't have to ballot, they simply guarantee a place. So for phase 2A, it is for the alumni, parents or their siblings used to study in the school, or if they are a community member, they are staff, they are eligible for this phase. And in this phase, if it's oversubscribed, they will have to do a ballot. So in 2026, there are 35 oversubscribed schools that will undergo balloting. And if there are any vacancies left from phase 1 and 2A, it will be allocated to phase 2B and 2C. Phase 2B has already been reserved 20 vacancies. Children with parents who do volunteer work, etc. will be eligible to register in this phase. And if it's oversubscribed, a ballot needs to be done as well. So any spillover from phase 1 all the way to phase 2B, if they didn't manage to get a slot, they will then go into phase 2C, where you live plays an important role. There are reserved of 40 vacancies. Again, if there's oversubscription, parents will need to ballot. So for phase 2C supplementary, it is the final opportunity for eligible students who were unsuccessful in the previous phases. They can then apply to schools that still have vacancies. And those who are still not successful after the 2C supplementary, the ministry will allocate them to any schools with vacancies. So in short, while there are reserved spaces allocated for those staying within 1 km, those who are not selected in the first few phases will still become an added competition by the time phase 2C is open. All phases requires balloting except for phase 1. And out of the 5 phases, phase 2C is the 4th step of the 5-step process. And the key is the moment the first child is in the school, the subsequent sibling don't have to worry because phase 1 already guarantees them a space. Now the catch is this: parents can only ballot for 1 school. So moving within 1 km to that particular school is like going to the gym. It doesn't guarantee you to have abs, but at least it increases your odds of having one. You're giving yourself a much better chance than if you never trained. So this reminds me of some clients. They were sharing with me how they moved their entire family to be within 1 km of the school that they have hoped for. They still didn't manage to get into the school. And I've also heard of stories where clients actually choose to go to single gender school, thinking that single gender school might give them more opportunities than co-ed schools. So back to investigating our first suspect. So I needed to find out just how often do the popular primary schools get oversubscribed in the phase 2C in the past 5 years, and if they are oversubscribed, by how many times. Then this will inform us of the odds of being guaranteed admission. So what I did was to look at the parents forum to find out what are the top 10 popular schools, and we look at the data from the past 5 years, especially in the phase 2C. Number 1, top 10 popular schools are consistently oversubscribed in the phase 2C for the past 5 years, ranging from being oversubscribed by 1.5 times all the way to 4 times oversubscribed, meaning to say there are 4 times more applicants than vacancies. And secondly, we found that out of the 10 popular schools, 6 are co-ed schools and 4 are single gender schools. The co-ed schools are around an average of 2.3 times oversubscribed, whereas the single gender schools were about 1.7 times oversubscribed. So the question begs, so just how much does living nearby improve the chances of admission? So a common suspect that we always hear is, if I am paying a premium today to be 1 km to the school, then my future buyer who's going to buy from me should also be willing to pay for that premium, right? Now let's investigate. So to do this, I measure the transaction volume in each district where the top 10 schools are located. Now, not all the districts have the right comparables, so I narrowed down to 4 districts, and they are just nice in the north, south, east, west of Singapore. So what I did was, in that 4 districts, I looked at the popular school. I took a project that is within 1 km and compared to another that was outside 1 km. We look at the past 5 years, I only chose projects that have the same tenure, similar project size and age, comparable tree beta sizes. And of course, this is not a perfect method. There are limitations because we're only looking at 4 districts. So this is what I found. Out of the 4 districts, there were 2 districts that had more transactions for the projects within 1 km. And for the other 2 districts, there were more transaction or buyers for the projects outside the 1 km. So does being within 1 km of a popular school means consistently stronger buyer demand? Or is it only in certain locations? Then when we investigate suspect number 3, a common belief is that if I pay a premium for being close to a popular school, I should expect a greater capital appreciation because of that school demand or that school effect. So what I did was, for the same 4 districts, looking at the same projects because they're already comparable, I then look at the past 10 years transaction data. I look at the maximum profit. I look at the annualized gains. Why 10 years? Because the first child that enters will study for 6 years in a primary school. If they have a sibling that enters the school after him, maybe it will stretch to 12, 13, 14 years. So a 10 years is a good average. And of course, this is not a perfect method. And here is what I found. So the annualized gains for the project that's within 1 km and outside of 1 km, the difference was a mere 1%. And for 2 of the districts, the annualized gains for projects outside the 1 km was actually higher. And then when we look at profit, it is also mixed. 2 projects that's within 1 km gotten 100k more in terms of maximum profit. In that 2 other districts, projects that were outside 1 km was actually earning more profit. For the 2 districts with the projects that earn more outside the 1 km, one of it had a wider gap of 400k as compared to the projects that is within 1 km. So does being within 1 km of the school widen the premium, or does it shrink the premium, or is it constant? So it seems to depend on more than the distance from the school. Now the 4th suspect that we always hear would be the convenience and the lifestyle benefits justify the premium. Now, of course, this is not measurable because it's very subjective. To me, I see it as buying a gym membership versus hiring a personal trainer to come to your home. Which one is better? Neither. One saves time, one saves money. You're paying for convenience, property is no different. So maybe you're paying the extra premium because you avoid that 2 hours of commuting every day. Your child gets more sleep. Family life is less stressful. You don't have to wake up early in the morning to get the family ready. So the benefits are real. But the question is, how much are they worth to you? Which is also a question that only you can answer. So this reminds me of several PR families who just gotten their PR and their child is finally allocated a place in a school with vacancy. And the school happens to be far from where they're currently staying. A lot of them have decided to uproot and rent somewhere nearer. The logistics and the cost involved is something that they are willing to pay because that commuting is just too much for them at the moment. And they value the convenience very much. So apart from the obvious convenience it would bring living closer to school, the evidence is quite mixed. Whether the premium can be fully recovered at resale, whether demand is consistently stronger across all neighbourhoods, and the evidence does not support that just being within 1 km of the school guarantees admission. The evidence does not support that paying a premium is also financially worthwhile. So this also brings us to another question: whether it is a worthwhile endeavour to rent a place near 1 km to the school while owning another place that can give you better growth. And that will be our next case.